All right. Well, hello. I am Andrea Goeglein, and thank you for coming back to visit for a conversation today. I have a really exciting, I have to say, in the conversation of when you ask people, there is something known as the get, and my get is Mark Waldman, who is someone who has been in my life, unbeknownst to him, for at least 15 years. through
Another
um, um
stalker.
yes, and you know, it is so how Mark has been in my life is through my morning readings. I have subscribed for a minimum of 15 years, and it could be 20, to a little book from Science of Mind with daily readings. And when I first got it, I started reading a monthly article that you and one of your
And
co-researchers, co-authors, Andrew Newberg, because that was the field I was in. And it has been you're the first article I read every time the magazine comes. And so for me, this is an incredible honor. And so let me very formally introduce everyone to who Mark is. Mark Waldman is a leading researcher in the new field of network neuroscience and has authored over 14 books, including Words Can Change Your Brain and the national bestseller, How God Changes Your Brain, selected by Oprah as a must-read book. He served on the faculty of the Holmes Institute, and he created the world's first Neuroleadership program for Loyola Marymount University. Along with Andrew Newberg, Mark is considered one of the world's leading experts on how spiritual practices and mindful speaking can enhance brain functioning. Their research has been featured in Time Magazine, Newsweek, Washington Post, the New York Times, Forbes, PBS, and NPR, and I happen to be on the board of Nevada NPR. His NeuroCoaching courses provide unique brain-based and evidence-based tools for maintaining optimal psychological health. For more information, go to Mark Robert Waldman, which I will have all of this information in the bio when we get started. Mark, welcome. There's 100 reasons why you're here today that it makes me so happy.
well, thank
But
you so much for having me.
yeah. You know, when I read a bio like that, I'm gonna deviate just a little bit, as I always do. Of all of those things that you've done to this moment in time, if people were to walk away with just one thing, we're doing the end first. What would you want people to know about the work you've contributed to and how it impacts them?
Well, I'm going to give two rather than one.
Okay.
So, a brand new field that nobody knew about, and even Andy and I didn't really know about until around 2016, was called Network Neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what I can tell all of you is everything that you think you know about the brain, throw it out the window. This is your new model of your brain. And so the focus, instead of being on these hundreds of different parts, yes, you'll still hear the amygdala and the hippocampus mentioned a few times,
Uh-huh.
but basically, we're going to look at three key or five different types of networks in your brain. This green area down the bottom, these are your emotional networks. So anything that you experience, the moment our eyes open up, anything that is interesting in the world, anything that is threatening in the world, anything that is pleasurable in the world, stimulates this
Mm-hmm.
deepest part of your brain, these emotional centers. And part of that emotional center is this yellow area, which we'll call the motivation network, or what you can
Mm-hmm.
also call your curiosity network. So when we open up our eyes and there is something that's new and different and interesting and potentially pleasurable or rewarding, all of this dopamine gets released from that
Mm-hmm.
yellow area, that motivation center, And it goes all the way up to the biggest network in your brain that's there even before you were born. Technically, everyone seems to want to call it the default network, but Martin Seligman likes to call it the imagination network, and it's a much better term. So in this part of your brain, all of this dopamine comes up, and what it is designed to do, it creates 100 different thoughts and feelings, all of which are nonverbal, of all the ways that you may be able to attain some of that pleasure, or all the ways that you shouldn't. So that your shoulds and your shouldn'ts and your want tos and your desires and your feelings and your thoughts about everything, they're going on 30 times faster than you could ever put into words.
Right.
And if you spend too much time up here, you'll get lost in your thoughts and feelings. Well, there's a word for that, anxiety. There's another word for that, depression, which is simply taking your anxiety seriously. In fact, virtually every psychological problem is pretty much identified as being too much activity in this imagination network. So there's another structure, this blue area, and this is what emerged out of my and Andy's research, that when you're doing any form of deeply relaxed, mindful, meditative practice, this blue area, the salience network, gets stimulated. Now, it plays the most crucial role in your brain because it helps to regulate the balance between these other networks. So it slows down all of that excessive thinking, which allows you to, the purple area here, to consciously decide what you want to do and to carry out an action in the world.
Right.
So when you're doing something, here I am speaking, okay? So I'm using that central executive network, that doing network. But and as I'm speaking, I have to turn off my imagination. But if you hear somebody, and I used to do this all the time, you'd wander around, you start talking about this, you get halfway through, oh, I think I'll have some kind of coffee. And you know, that thing behind you is kind of wonderful. And oh, what was I saying before? That is too much busyness up here. And I'm trying to put into words my imagination, my thoughts, my feelings. So you have to pause and deeply relax. And what's the fastest way to do that? Well, 3 mindful yawns actually also slows down all that busyness up there. And now that you're more in the present moment, it's easier to allow that salience network to decide what is the best impression, what is the best thought to put together some type of meaningful action in the world that will just bring you more pleasure and satisfaction and joy.
You know, I have to pause you for a moment.
Yes.
Because you said the word yawn, 3 mindful yawns. You know, obviously I used your book a lot over the years, and the opportunity to be with you today made me revisit it. But I remembered so distinctly the simple task of yawning and the exercise that you said, and you're doing this with executives. You're doing this so people can be more successful at their chosen careers or to choose careers that will allow them to have that drive. These are not exercises that you're suggesting, you know, you're not taking resumes for monks. That's what I liked most about your work. And something as simple as a yawn, which I had never thought about. And I remember the first time I taught you a lesson and this book in a workshop, and I said, so, you know, if you start getting like you're not coming up with answers in a meeting and you're trying to figure this out, start yawning. And it was like, whoa.
Well, actually, just do 3 mindful yawns. And the reason why...
So talk to us about that. Yes.
So that's why all I wanted to do is to have everyone to keep in your mind is that, okay, we're motivated to go do things in the world that are pleasurable, that yellow area. And that dopamine turns on our imagination network. This is our creativity network. This is part
Right.
of your brain that's trying to predict how to get what you really want in the world. And if you don't, and if it gets too busy, you're in trouble. You're going to be just lost in your imagination, and then some therapist is going to diagnose you with anything from autism to ADHD to dyslexia or whatever
Right.
else, and they don't know this. This is just really busy. But any form of pulling yourself fully into the present moment and just watching all of that babbling noise up there, all that mindful mind wandering, just those
Hmm.
two things, being in the present moment, watching all those thoughts, slows down all those thoughts. And then you can use your intuition, which is also that blue area. You can literally ask this inner voice, this inner wisdom, for what the best choice might be. But these are all words. Let's just experience it. You, me, everyone who's
Okay.
watching this.
Perfect.
How would you describe your state of consciousness right now?
Present. Present. Listening.
So, what I mean by a mindful yawn is just to, you close your eyes, you want to pay attention to where does that yawn begin? What does
Hmm.
it feel like as you yawn? And then after you've yawned, even if you fake it, keeping your eyes closed, see if there's a slight shift in your mental state or your mood. So, everyone, let's just do a mindful yawn together. It's contagious. There are 400 studies showing that this is essential for neurological health. And Andrea, just share with me if you notice any shift in your mental state or your mood.
My mind went quieter. I didn't expect that. Somewhere around the third time I did it,
Yeah.
my mind went quieter.
So I want you to take a moment right now and I want you to savor that sense of quietness, which again is wordless. And for most people, it takes them 3 mindful yawns to get to this place. It's also where you usually get to after 30 or 40 minutes of meditation. So you can get there in 10 seconds.
Mhm.
Now, if you really want to have fun, do another mindful yawn and watch where you go this time. How would you describe this new state that's even beyond calmness?
It's almost blank. It was almost blank there. Yeah.
Now, in this blank state, that's you've turned off all of that excessive busyness. Ask your intuition, that salience network. What question does it really want to ask me? What question would it really like to explore that would have the most amount of value specifically to you?
Mm. You know, it brings me to why I asked you to be here today, that your article on empathy, and I'm dating this video on purpose, February 25th, 2025, because I think it's very important that the material that we put out, that people understand and think about the context that we're offering, what you do and your research in a time where the external world is quite chaotic in the United States and other places, but this is where we are. So when I read, and the question that when you just asked this, it was like, how will empathy help us where we are economically in our business lives and traversing where we are in our political lives? Like
So
that was
pause,
the,
so pause
yeah.
there. And everyone who's been listening to this as well, I want you to do another few mindful yawns or super slow stretch, anything that pulls you back into that quiet, calm place. And I'm going to do the same. So instead of answering from my knowledge, I'm going to answer from my intuition. When you are in this calm state, it is the only place where empathy exists. And it involves several things. So that's why I'm saying if you could stay in a meditation state, a mindful state, that's part one. But then you open up your eyes and you make contact with some. This is a wonderful, playful game to do with your,
Right.
you can do it with your kid, you can do whatever else. So the two of you are sitting here now, calm, mind very busy.
Right.
What does your intuition want to say? Well, it turns out that what it whispers is often less than 10 words, but no more than 20. Now you pause and you go back into that relaxed, mindful state while the listener lets those words flow through all of their creativity, putting it together in a way that's valuable for you. And then they respond with another 10 or 20 words. And that kind of dialogue with eyes open, that kind of connection, that's required for empathy. And it's a profound sense of intimacy. It takes away the need to babble on and on and on to explain whatever you want. And business people know this quite as well. They get very irritated if you're part of the company or whatever else, they ask you a question. They do not want you to speak more than 10 or 20 words, period.
Right.
It saves time. It's the only way your brain can understand what the other person wants you to do, and for the other person to know that you understand what they're doing. And it also allows you to tap into your intuition to accomplish what you want to do. So that little blue network, that salience network, if it's dysfunctional, everything in your life is dysfunctional. If it's dysfunctional, you won't be able to empathize with another person. Your head will get too busy and you won't be able to find a way to say just a little bit of information, just enough that the other person's brain can absorb. So that's what empathy is. Now,
be a little clearer on that, because I have the definition and everything, because I want to make sure we use certain words in our, especially, I empathize with them. Like, what does it mean, particularly in business? We're observing a lot of chaos in the way people are being laid off at the federal level.
Empathy. Want to play this game in the right? You want to create an empathic conversation that our audience will understand better?
Absolutely.
Raise your hands. Use your intuition to find 10 or 20 words to say exactly what you need, no more.
I need to connect with why this is happening the way it is.
How much clearer did that statement sound to even your ears?
Yeah, I wasn't sure why this was bothering me so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you pause. And for everyone who's listening, they can absorb this information in much more.
Yeah.
So ask that question again, maybe in 10 words.
What is empathy?
Being fully present in this moment with another person experiencing mutual enjoyment.
Now that feels a little off for me.
So just pause,
Because
just pause at that sentence. It feels a little off
okay.
for me. And sit with that.
Mm-hmm.
Use your intuition and give me your deepest definition of empathy. But count your words so that you stay
Okay.
grounded and
Connecting
focused.
with someone when they are troubled.
If it is not mutual, you might connect, you'll feel compassion,
Mm-hmm.
but they're lost in their trouble because they're not verbally and visually connected to you. The
Mm-hmm.
moment they do this, and maybe with a few mindful yawns and super slow stretches, all of that trouble falls away briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Now the two of you can begin to have a conversation in the present moment. And 90% of most troubles is really just excessive fantasy, worries, fears, just part of your imagination network.
Right. And I will tell you that as I first started getting calls from people who were affected, I remembered listening, but then saying, you really need to pause before you react so that you'll make the best decisions. And it was that recognition that, wait a minute, I've just been a listener. Someone's experiencing something, and it was compassion. And that's why I wanted the difference. Like when you said pleasurable, when it comes to empathy, I was really coming from a place of compassion, of also trying to solve this momentary, I can't solve the job. I can't solve what's going on, but I could help momentarily with where the person was. And so your article it talked about gender and age and how as individuals, we become actually less empathetic, particularly if you're a female. And I resembled that remark because I have actually observed that in myself.
Well,
That,
the more a
yeah.
person talks and the more the other person's listen, the less
Mm-hmm.
empathy is going on, because there's a neuroscientific fact behind this 10-word game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Our brain can only take in about 10 or 20 words before you
Mm-hmm.
actually use up all the neurochemicals to stay focused on what the other person is saying. Then it wanders off back into the imagination network. And so for the next 5 or 10 seconds, I don't hear a single word you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts us on different pages.
Yeah. And I haven't realized that, but just doing this with you, I can remember the conversations and remembered me listening and remembered me. It's not as though I stopped listening, but I stopped being able to process what was coming in because I felt I had already heard it.
With these pauses,
Mm-hmm.
the other person, if you've spoken briefly, will know if you're on the same page as they are. So you kind of have to do that, kind of go back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. And that's what we teach to our executives, particularly when dealing with, their staff. But we also teach
Mm-hmm.
it to families, because the parent will chatter on and on and on for 20 or 30 or 40 words, and the kid is zoned out. You,
Right.
as a coach and a therapist, if I put these two people together and I tell them, you each are going to only speak 10 words, you'll see the biggest smile on this 10-year-old's face. It's hard to get more than 10 words out of your kids anyway.
So I'm curious. We're doing this as an exercise right now, and I fully understand what we're doing. How do I do that at work? I mean, I'm not lifting my fingers at work. How do you do this? You're in a meeting. How do you do this?
Well, if you're the CEO, you tell everyone, this is what we're going to do or you're fired. So that makes it easy.
Oh,
Okay.
that method.
That method, yes.
That
Well,
method.
I'm running this company. This is my game. You come to my workshop, you're going to pair up, you're going to do this. You don't want to do that?
Okay.
There's the exit door.
Yes. Okay.
Because if that person doesn't want to do that, but my job or I've been hired to teach you this, there's no
Yes.
empathy.
Right.
And that's what you see in politics. You don't see two people trying to meet each other face to face, suspending, because in that state of calmness, you've also suspended your belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who don't have that ability to do that. And sadly, CEOs tend to be less, they don't have the ability to empathize. They actually have a smaller salience network.
Really?
Hmm.
I
But
did not know that.
they don't get lost in their imagination, because you have to stay highly focused on the goal you want to achieve, which is that central executive network. Interesting that it's called the
Mm-hmm.
central executive network. And to do
Mm-hmm.
that. But for somebody who might be on the autistic spectrum, for example, something very interesting happens. The research shows that when somebody on the higher aspects of the autistic spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
when they try to empathize with another person, when they try to be present, eyes open,
Mm-hmm.
connected to you, there's a glitch that can go on in their brain.
Mm.
Their salience network does get stimulated, but it causes the imagination network to go into hyperspeed. And so that's where you see that person wanting to turn away, even maybe bang their head against. It's just too much noise going on as they try to empathize. So I got to turn away from you. I got to disconnect. And
Right.
then I may or may not be able to handle that noise. But for people who have ASD or ADHD in college, we've done this. If I speak to that person as a teacher or a friend and pause after 10 or 20 words, they will tell you how much calmer they feel, more comfortable they feel. That's empathy. So the basic rule in empathy is don't speak too much.
Gosh, I'm going to be in trouble. No wonder I don't get everything. So now I'm going to tell you why this hit me the way it did, why the article did. Back in 1987, I was doing my master's and I needed to do a thesis. And I was also a DISC practitioner, a DISC behavioral assessment practitioner. And I was using the DISC instrument in my study to study women, because one of the common things that were being said in the 80s about professional women was that they have to be two different people, one person at work and one person at home, and that this was causing a degree of cognitive dissonance. And I was going to have people take two different profiles, the same profile, but thinking of different environments, one at work, one at home, and see if there was a change. And then I had a survey, and the first question was, do you consider yourself empathetic? And I had to look up the definition of empathy.
Right. That's why my neuroscientific definition of empathy is different from the psychological definition and quite different from your dictionary definition.
Yeah. Yeah. And yours makes far more sense to me, to tell you the truth.
You have to be in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have your eyes connected because
Mm-hmm.
basic communication is based on your facial expressions, number one.
Yeah.
The tone of your voice, number two.
Mm-hmm.
And number 10, all the way down the line, are the words themselves.
Interesting. This is so great.
Your brain's not interested in speaking. In fact, the newest research that I'm in love with is in the field of neurocognitive poetics.
Okay.
And it is the research is convincing that if we do not speak in a poetic way, pause/new verse, the other person's brain cannot, will not fall into sync with you. So I'm bringing melody, I'm bringing lyrical quality, and when you read a poem, it forces you to pause, oftentimes in less than 10 words.
Mm-hmm.
That's how your brain is built to listen. It would be better if you and I sang about our problems and troubles with each other or the world. We'd laugh at some of the most awful things.
This is amazing. I'm honestly, I'm just laughing at myself because poetry is the other thing. I just am so bad when it comes to poetry. And I have a success collaborative. We meet every Thursday. We're just 4 random people who come together over coffee. And one of them wrote a book on using poetry to help you clarify life questions.
Yes.
And I said, oh no, I'm buying this for my daughter because she's the poet in the family, not me. And it's amazing. He's done a good job for me, a person who doesn't see themselves as someone who enjoys poetry. But I will tell you that your saying this will cause me to pay attention to it
But
in a different way.
let me demonstrate it for you.
Okay.
Okay. You only get 10 words, okay?
You're killing me.
Tell me in 10 words the first sentence of your poem. Why you're a bad poet.
Oh, I'm a bad poet because I don't like to feel.
I'm a bad poet. I don't like to feel. What's the next phrase?
When I'm working, and I don't like emotions to get in the way.
I'm a bad poet. I don't like to feel. My work requires me to do some other damn deal.
Yep. True. Very true.
Obviously, it doesn't have to rhyme. Children can
Right.
only learn their ABCs, not by saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. It has to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Hmm.
So intuitively, we know that that musical discourse, and oral communication, storytelling, whatever.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
storytelling. You're
Hmm.
more like an actor on the stage. So you get into the part of what you want to say. I'm such a bad poet. Don't you know it? It doesn't even have to rhyme half of the time.
Right. Right.
So I have a hat. I'm the founder of the Bad Poet Society.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
The goal is that you deliberately attempt to write a bad poem. One is it'll teach you, in order to do so, you actually have to violate the rules of good poetry, which nobody has ever been able to define in 2,000 years.
Yeah.
But the other thing about, if you really want to use writing to heal yourself from it, be a trauma or whatever, like my wife passed away quickly a year ago. And when I find disturbing thoughts going on, I can sit down with pen and paper and ask my intuition, kind of like Jung's archetypal
Hmm.
imagination, and I can watch my pen scroll out something that's more poetic, doesn't have to be, but
Right.
brief, because again, impressions come, words come from impressions that are very brief.
Hmm.
And if you write it knowing that you intend to share with somebody else,
Hmm.
you won't need to go through the roller coasters of grief, more like waves of
Hmm.
sadness.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. I
Again, slowing
actually,
down, brevity, warmth.
yes.
But you have to stay connected. So you and I are
Yeah.
playing together. If I'm talking about this and you
Exactly.
don't enjoy it and you want to say this and I'm not listening,
Correct.
we're not playing together. So if you want to bring that
Hmm.
into political problems or whatever else, how many people do you know will not play this game? How many people will not even give a darn about listening to you or
Right.
being present rather
But
than
I have
just do what I
been,
say?
yeah, I have been absorbing this and experiencing it from that question that I wrote to you about if you had the opportunity to facilitate the Doge team, what would you, what kind of processes would you take them through?
Well,
And I could very much see
do,
this
yeah,
is what you would do.
do let I do want to let you know that I can be very humorous in a dark sort of way. First, I recommend that you go practice at a rifle range. Does that answer?
Well, well, um, actually, I did experience in Snowmass, not Snowmass, Park City. There was a school for kids who were hyperactive, and you could hire. I like to snowshoe, and I would always need someone. I wouldn't want to go alone, and you could hire someone to come with you. And the fee that you paid that person went to this school that supported these kids to be able from like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day to snowshoe, basically exhaust them. To your point, go to a shooting range, get that out of your system first. Then let's see what we can do.
Yeah, all of that movement takes concentration and focus, and again, that slows down the
Yeah.
excessive activity that is at the
Hmm.
core of any psychological problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been incredible for me. And thank you. Is there anything else that you would like us to cover before we say our goodbyes?
Set a mindfulness clock on your cell phone and your computer. Set it to ring 2 or 3 times an hour. That's why I use the bell. When you hear that, no matter what you are, in the middle of whatever, and this is what, and our executive MBA students love doing this. First they're irritated with it because they don't want to stop what they're doing, but they'll stop because it only takes 10 seconds. Business people will only give you, maybe 30 seconds of meditation practice. But in those 10 seconds, do one mindful yawn. Notice if you suddenly feel more grounded, focused, present. If that doesn't work, maybe one super slow movement or stretch. Or you can ask your intuition for a single word, a value word, to help direct them for the next hour. And then throw yourself back into work. And,
Like for our children.
if you go deep enough into it, you might even become cat atomic.
Yes. Very good. On that note, I will just say thank you so much. I hope that everyone else finds this as incredibly helpful. Understanding how this work, your work, impacts the ability to create a livelihood that then creates communities, that then creates our economic system. These are not separate. The spiritual is not separate from everything else that we create. And I just want to, Mark Waldman, thank you so much. I will have your bio and your website. And I highly recommend this book, which wasn't part of the bio, because I've got it as dog-eared as anything.
I have 2 more words. Use your curiosity and playfulness in every conversation. This brain was not built to be serious. Your cat is not being serious right now. It's in a state of pleasurable bliss. That's the best way to interact with others. And the reason why I don't engage in politics is that I don't find people in that world being curious or playful with me. And so I'd rather reach out to you and your audience and be playful with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And the unicorn joined for the exact reason that a few years ago, I realized we had to remember you can be silly and be successful. Thank you. I am Andrea Goeglein. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Please leave respectful comments and we will be sure to respond. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.